have been, before we came back, Mr. Former Speaker, good to have you on. We may have mentioned the current Speaker before we came back. What can you say publicly about his position at this point?
Look, it's a tough job, otherwise I'd still be there. I don't think he has a problem in his job we're close to the election. I don't think the Democrats would remove him. I think he's fine between now and the election.
Would you have done the same thing with the funding with Israel and taken the Democratic support?
I would have done. I had things to do something different. I never think if you're the Speaker of the House and you have the majority, why do you let the Senate Republicans lead in the minority? I think the power of the Speaker is kind of like what I did with the debt ceiling. The first thing I would have done after October 7th, I would have moved Israel money with no pay for. Because we're sitting in a world that looks like the 1930s. Why give any doubt to Iran or anybody else where we stand? I secondly would have then gone to the president, not negotiated with the other leaders. If I negotiated with the other leaders the debt ceiling, would we gotten $2 trillion in cuts or welfare reform or NEPA reform? No, Hakeem and Schumer can't ever agree to that. You go directly and negotiate with the president. That's what you should have done with the border. And then you put the border with Ukraine. You would have got it done before Thanksgiving, before these members were in a primary, and it would have been a win-win for both sides. By sitting back and waiting, you waited till Schumer got what he wanted and brought it to the floor, and then you were boxed in. Now you made everybody mad.
The threats are still there from not in this case from Matt Gaetz as much, but from some of the other people that occupy that sector of the Republican Party, Marjorie Taylor Greene, whoever. Do you think that the bloom is off the rose a little bit with that faction, or you think they'll come back with a vengeance?
Look, I think structure dictates behavior in business and in Congress. And if you had 8 Republicans sitting in a majority that work with all the Democrats to determine who the Speaker is, right, and there's no consequences if they broke the rules, you're going to have chaos, and that's what you have now. And the interesting part here, it's easier for Republicans to win seats in the next Congress than it was for the last 2 Congresses. You've had redistricting in North Carolina, so Republicans automatically pick up 3. Hakeem did not do well. He got rolled in New York's redistricting. They didn't get Wisconsin. They got 1 seat down in Alabama. I think Louisiana, that gets overturned. Last time Biden was on the ticket, I was the leader. It was the first time since '94. Not 1 Republican incumbent lost. And if you look at this re-election for president, Biden won the presidency by 48,918 votes. At that time, his favorability was +10. Now it's -20. And he's running for re-election. So it's a report card on him. So it's only a momentum. But the only disadvantage I see right now is money. Now, when I was leader, just the super PAC had more money than the DCCC and their super PAC combined. Now it's a disadvantage. I'm watching what the Democrats are doing, especially with Act Blue. And money in politics is not equal. If a candidate or a member, they get to buy TV time at a lower rate. And think about what we did last time. Slotkin's now not running for re-election in Michigan. We'll pick that seat up, right? Then if you look and you go to Pennsylvania, we had a terrible gubernatorial candidate. We have a great Senate candidate now. I think we could pick up 3 seats in Pennsylvania. You look in California. The last 2 cycles, I picked up 5 seats in California. I think we've got 2 more to go. We picked up in...
So unless does the money matter, though?
Money matters to a point. If you're not competitive, and it's kind of like a chess game. If the Democrats are able to make other seats competitive where you're playing defense, then you're in trouble. What we were able to do before is expand the playing field. Like if we're winning in Oregon and Arizona where other Republicans are losing, that's where Democrats are playing defense. So who's ever playing on offense has the best ability.
So who is making those decisions at this point? Because obviously you spent a lot of time, you understood this, you worked your way through the politics. Does Mike Johnson understand?
Well, it's the responsibility of the Speaker, and he's out there. The challenge is it's money to raise, right? And you've got to raise that money not just for the party, but for the members as well. They're falling a little behind.
You think Trump's going to be able to close the gap with Biden?
Well, see, this is a strategy that the Democrats are doing against Trump. And there's twofold that is playing back against him. They're bogging President Trump down in spending his money on attorneys, which gives them an advantage. But their whole argument about democracy is they're losing that. Because they're trying to kick him off the ballot. They're going after court. And regardless of how you think about President Trump, does anyone in America believe he would be on trial today if he had not run for president?
What happened?
So it's an attack on democracy.
If he had not run for president?
Had he not run for re-election, for president now, do you believe he'd be in trial?
That
today
hush
in New
money,
York?
that hush money trial was
I
on
think
the
it's
back burner.
possible.
No,
Why
not
not?
that.
Okay,
The hush
if
money.
you think just the word "it's possible," then I know you don't believe that.
What
No,
about?
I think it's very possible.
He cobbled together
come
all
on.
these.
I think, in fact, I think it would have actually been easier for the folks who brought the case
Maybe some of the
to
other-
bring it otherwise.
Which
I think the fact that he
Which
was
trial?
running made it actually harder.
Which
But
trial?
Kevin,
Which
the
trial?
opposite argument has been made that the reason he was running is because he wanted to be able to put a stop and
But not to the Stormy,
Right.
not to the Stormy
He
Daniels.
was running on.
And by the
before
way, if you
this
really
happened.
believed that Biden was so effective at trying to, clamp down on his opponent, they would have brought this case a long time ago. They wouldn't have done it the way they've
They've
done
done
now.
4 different cases. They tried to kick him off the Colorado ballot. I mean, if you really want to make the argument about democracy, I've watched so many things that we keep transpiring here, but they're losing that argument because they're combating against democracy, denying somebody the ballot, going after somebody right before the election. Some of these lawsuits are frivolous by all extremes.
Serious
Yeah.
believes that the Stormy Daniels trial would have been brought, or that
It's already been
the
looked at how
cobbling
many different
together
ways.
these misdemeanors and then not telling you what takes it to a felony, what the crime
Yeah.
is that takes it to. It was on the desk of New York prosecutors for 4 or 5 years. No one did anything with it. Then Alvin Bragg, brings it up, cobbles it together. That's why people. I mean, you just look at the response nationwide to that. The other ones, maybe you've got something there with the documents or the Georgia case, but the Stormy
Yeah, okay,
Daniels.
but
Maybe
where's the
you've got
fairness?
something with the other.
But you haven't got the documents with Biden. I mean, I think what America really needs right now is a debate about the issues and what the future looks like. Should we be debating about what's our policy when it comes to China? Where are we going to stand on AI? What are we going to do in the defense world? Where are we based upon energy? These are all things that hopefully I'll come back in a couple of months and announce something very exciting. These are issues I focused on in Congress. And we're gonna
I
continue.
think I think that part of the issue about the debate is there's the debate about what's the future of the country like, and then there is a debate that there's a huge group of Democrats who are genuinely having a debate about what they think democracy is and whether democracy would hold in a world where former President Trump becomes the president. And what they look to is they look at January 6th. They look at that article, by the way, on Friday, which I know you think is discredited, but that article that suggested that he wants to, remove the independence of the Federal Reserve. And if he can't do it legally, he's going to try to make a secret deal with the next Fed chair. I mean, it's that kind of thing. It's the Heritage Foundation's documents on how they want to effectively undermine at least the current government and throw out, 70% of the employees. I mean, it's that has people concerned about the quote-unquote future of the country.
I get that. It's interesting. I just had gone through a little college tour. I did Georgetown and did Harvard in some of these debates. The part that America's missing, both parties are now debating the attack on democracy, but we both look at it fundamentally different.
Right.
The Democrats look like that, and let me be very clear. I denounce anything that happened on January 6th. I think what happened there is totally wrong in all shapes or form. I was removed there from every aspect. But also, if you take for one moment, take a deep breath, do you think it's right that another party, just for political purposes, tries to remove somebody, your opposition, from a ballot, or takes them to court in frivolous manners right before an election? So people think it's the same debate and argument, but now they view it different. Because maybe you don't think about this, but right before the last election, you had those who are now sitting from Secretary of State, from all different aspects of government, tell America that the New York Post story was Russia collusion, that
Lincoln.
it was all a lie when they knew it was different.
Lincoln.
Then they went out and got 51 people who, from CIA director and others, to tell the American people no. And then they went to businesses that control social media and tell them, you can't repost that. And if an average American does it, you take it down.
And then President Biden himself.
Is that an attack on
President
democracy?
Biden himself used that letter and knowing full
Yes,
well
in
that it
debate.
wasn't right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the problem is we all look at it from our own spectrum. Instead of saying,
So how do we fix that, Kevin?
well, we don't sit and think just our elected officials are going to fix this. The uniqueness of America, of the people, by the people, for the people, we all have to engage. But why are we engaging in the world today where we just want to defeat the other side? I mean, in America, every day you have people on here that have a win-win decision-making process. And if we start putting kind of the country first in a
that's
manner,
where most average Americans are.
They are.
I think when
They're
you're looking
hungry.
at it from the, Washington or maybe New York, I think most average Americans just look at it from, here's what I would do if we could try and pull some problems together.
yes.
I think.
And I will tell you, serving in Congress, there's people on both sides of the aisle that fundamentally believe that. But we highlight like these 8, right?
Right.
And then we play to it when we say we don't want to. Why did every single Democrat go with them? Because they took it for a political advantage.
Right.
You know? We have to take a deep breath. I think presidential elections should be aspirational about the future. And we can control what they debate about if that's what we'll vote about. But today, the moderates are those, I wouldn't call them moderates. I think that's unfair. If I'm a conservative and I want to govern, and because I want to govern, you want to call me a moderate, that's wrong. Because these new people who try to decide themselves conservative, they're not. They spend
Like
more
Judge
money.
Gregg.
Yeah.
He's very conservative, but
they're
he's
not,
also very
they're not getting
willing to
rewarded.
work
They can't get
across.
reelected.
Yeah.
A Sinema, she's a conservative Democrat, but she can't run for reelection because she can't get reelected. A Manchin in West Virginia. So where people sit back and say, I want to celebrate these type of people across the aisle, no. And then we sit back and say we don't get the government we want.
Who's in the pole position for Trump's vice president at this point? Tim Scott?
Look, no one's going to tell President Trump who to pick. I think he's going to play apprentice. He's going to make them all.
Is there any way it would be DeSantis?
I think I don't think so. It's possible because if you look at President Trump selecting Mike Pence, 2 months prior, Mike Pence had endorsed against him in the primary. The president, Trump, is more pragmatic than people think. He wants to win. He wants to govern. I think Tim Scott is an ideal candidate for him. You need someone that understands the Senate, somebody who understands the House. You need somebody who would expand the party. Another number that you should look at, if you love data, is not just that President Biden won the election so narrow. If you now look at the polling today in the Hispanic community and the African American community, based upon where he was 4 years ago, he's in real trouble.
Right. There was even, a Colin Jost joke about some of that loss of support, which you don't hear much from usually at that dinner, which you missed.
But thank you for the invitation,
You're
and if you
welcome.
invite me now for next year, I'll book it in.
We'll see. We'll see.
I just don't want you to cancel me.
No, yeah. You were worried you were going to get.
No.
Don't bring that up. Oh my God. Speaking of
Okay,
McCarthy.
I got another question.
Yeah.
When you talk about democracy and everything else,
Right.
PBS,
Yeah.
who gets money from government, has 87 employees. Every single one's a Democrat. Is that wrong? Would that make the American
We didn't even talk
taxpayer
about
want-
college presidents, which
So you want
which
to
we
talk
could.
DEI now?
No, but I'm just saying the country as a whole, we wonder
Right.
why they get so frustrated and don't trust things. And we let
Right, but
something
the
go
other
too
part-
far.
the other part of it is true.
But let's talk college campuses. But I will tell you what's happening on college campuses today was happening in Congress just years ago. I had Congresswoman Tlaib having an event to denounce the creation of Israel, and I had to pull back the room for having inside Congress. You had Omar say American and Israel was equal to Hamas and the Taliban, and Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker, said, I will not rebuke her. She's an integral part of the Democratic Party. I removed her from Foreign Affairs. So if you wonder, why is this moving on college campuses? It was happening in Congress just a few years ago, and no one stood up to him.
It's a much longer conversation to do the PBS piece.
Yeah, but
next time I see you, we'll do
she's
it.
not, Andrew. She's
Should
not
tax-
unique. She's like a
is that
cookie cutter.
fair? If you're getting taxpayer money from all Americans, I mean, right there, it would at least raise doubt.
I don't know where that all lands. I will say this. There are people who say, and this goes to the whole democracy thing, that on a popular vote basis, there are more people have voted for a Democratic president than a Republican president. The Supreme Court today does not represent the popular electorate. Like you can look at a lot of these things and
Yeah, but
say there's
I could
something
take the
wrong
Supreme
with
Court just a few years
the
ago.
system.
Only 2 universities. They only came from 2 universities. I could say they only had 2 different states.
That's why our founders put in the electoral
But
college
you-
so big cities.
I
are
But you have to
understand that, but-
remember this of the country
We gotta
have.
go.
We're
Speaker
not
McCarthy.
perfect, but we strive to be a more perfect union. So let's move in
gotta
a
go.
direction that way.
Thank you. Thank you for all the time. Squawk Box will be right back.